So for every year that comes, there's also a downside to the films that you watch. These are the gonna be the video where I talk about the worst films that I've watched during the year 2021. And in the previous Philly video that I uploaded, which was the top 10 best films that I watched, I had some honorable mentions. And in this video, I'm going to have some dishonorable mentions as well, which just didn't really make the top 10 worst ones, but are still really awful and that I would say you should avoid at any cost. So, yeah. At number, not number. This is the first honorable mention. There's plenty of honorable, not honorable, dishonorable mentions in this video. So I'm gonna try to keep it short, but yeah. Also, I've actually written some small things on the IMDb list as well. So I'm gonna just read for you what I've written about each film. It's just a small little summary. It's nothing too much. So dishonorable mention number one, we have Any Given Sunday. Oh God, by Oliver Stone. I wrote for this film. This is going to be a little bit longer because yeah. Okay, I know there's worse films that I've given 2 out of 10 this year, but the reason why I put this film here is because I have no idea of how a film with so many talented actors and a very talented director could mess up this bad. Just a bunch of usual good actors screaming all the time while awful piece of music plays over most of their dialogue for almost 3 hours. Then, when the end credits starts, it decides to give you the middle finger because you know what? It doesn't end there. There's at least 2 or 4 more scenes before the continuation of the end credits. Shame on you, Oliver Stone. I mean, it really comes down to one thing, really. I mean, with this one, I believe, and it's the fact that I'm not a big fan of American football at all. So I was obviously not the target audience for this, but I mean, I had no idea what the film was about before I started watching it because I just saw, directed by Oliver Stone, and it had James Woods and Al Pacino and Cameron Diaz. I mean, really great actors. So I thought, well, this might be interesting. And then it's just screaming and screaming and just so much screaming, so much annoying music that I'm not a big fan of. That pretty much just draws out the entire dialogue because the dialogue is sometimes in the background of the song or the music that you can barely hear what they're talking about. Yeah, I'm just so surprised that was so disappointing in a film directed by Oliver Stone. But yeah, hey ho, let's continue. Dishonorable mention number two, we have Monster High from 1989, a horror comedy which I actually had some hopes for because it's an 80s horror film, 80s comedy, horror comedy film. Um, but damn, I mean, this film feels like it's 3 hours long and it's only about 1 hour and 20 minutes. Um, yeah, it's just baffling. Just unfunny jokes all over the place, and the storyline is just all over the place as well. So yeah, awful. Then next honorable mention we have is The Executioner Part 2, which is pretty funny because it says Executioner Part 2, but there isn't even a Part 1, which is really stupid. And I actually wrote a little note down there that says Part 1 was probably even worse since it doesn't even exist. Uh, I think this might have been one of those films that probably tried to cash in on the success. I'm not saying success like the big success, but it felt like this was a film that tried to cash in on the success of The Exterminator with Robert Ginty because it's sort of a similar plot. But there's next to there's no interesting characters. Nothing is good about this film. This is boring as hell. So yeah. And next is honorable mention. We have Theodore Rex from 1995. I wrote an annoying dinosaur who tries to be funny with his unfunny jokes for about 90 minutes is nothing else than tragic. Ugh. Yeah, that is really what it's all about. It's just once again it kind of feels like this falls almost the same category as Monster High. It's just joke after joke that is not even funny to begin with, and the costumes in the films are just laughable as well at some times. So uh, yeah, awful film, Theodore X. Next, this honorable mention is a film that me and my friend Daniel watched. I mean, I think there's plenty of films that I watched with Daniel that made it to this list, but well, we'll get to those eventually. But the next film is Paraplegic from 2013. This had some feelings for me that it the whole way this film is shot really reminded me of Hip Hop Locos, which is the worst film. Probably, I would say, still probably the worst film I've ever watched. It has the same style to it. I mean, it's just a gray, fussy. You could barely see what it is. I mean, is this? I'm not really sure if this is even a shot on video film. This is just a film which has a terrible quality to it. Sometimes that can be charming when you're having like an old shot on video film from the 80s or 90s, but this is just awful to look at, and the characters are annoying as hell. Uh, yeah, nothing funny about this one either. It's just bad. Yeah, Paraplegic. And then once again, I got fooled by the cover art. Um, for the next one, the film is called Jigsaw, not Jigsaw the in the Saw franchise. This is the Jigsaw film from 2002. If you look up the cover art, actually, that cover art really had me sold. That just tell me, whoa, this looks like an amazing film. Well, instead, you have a bunch of unfunny, like irritating kids roaming around in this house or farmhouse or whatever for most of the film. And the whole creature thing or the robot or whatever the hell it was looked laughable. Yeah, Jigsaw, next one. And the next dishonorable mention is the film called, oh damn, what is it called? Of course, there's the Japanese, like, but I can't see the English title. Yeah, Burst City is the title, from 1982. Now, I wrote, don't get me wrong, I like punk music from time to time, but with a shaky cam and a bunch of shouting non existent characters for almost 2 hours, no way. Because this film doesn't even have a storyline, it's just a bunch of people roaming around the streets screaming. I mean, it just felt like they shot like a riot in the streets and then they just pad that out for 2 hours along, just adding some punk music in the background to that, and then you have the film. And that's what's going on for almost 2 hours. So, ugh, I did not like this one. Even though did think some of the music in the beginning is like, oh, it's a nice little punk music, but I mean, it's just, ugh, for 2 hours, no, no, just no. Then the next one, dishonorable mention. The list is the next. This is the last dishonorable mention, by the way. So then we finally get to the top 10 worst ones. The next one is a slasher film from the 80s. The film is called A Day of Judgment from 1981. Probably one of the weakest slasher films from the 80s that I've ever seen. And I mean, this is not even a shot on video film or anything like that, because sometimes shot on video films tend to get really bad. But this one is just, oh, really boring. You just want this to end, and I think it's almost 1 hour and 40 minutes long, which just feels too long for a slasher film. So, yeah. Then, finally, we get to the top 10 list after almost 9 minutes. So, yeah, well, that's how it goes sometimes. So, at number 10, we have City of Blood, which is... I could say the same thing about this one that I said about A Day of Judgment. This is probably one of the weakest slasher films from the 80s that I've ever seen. Yeah, City of Blood, 1987. I mean, once again, I probably got fooled by the cover art. I'm not even sure if you could even call this a slasher film, but I mean, it's just a boring ass film. I would say this one, Deadly Games, and A Day of Judgment is probably the three worst slasher films from the 80s that I've seen. Well, at least those are the first three that comes to mind. So, yeah, City of Blood. Then at number 9, that's another film that I watched with Daniel. I think Daniel got fooled by the cover art of the film because the cover art is kind of funny. The film is Terror Tunes from 2002. And I wrote in like a little note there that says, let's use the same loop of the score over and over again throughout the film to see how many viewers want to blow their brains out, shall we? And also, not even the score, it's also some like sound effects they keep hammering on because there's some sort of monkey character or something. that gets just the shouting from the monkey. It just goes on and on and on for every single scene. As soon as he just shows up, they have that stupid monkey sound. It's the same sound that they use all the time when the monkey shows up. Oh, awful, awful film. Then at number 8 we have a film called Wish Me Luck, which starts off with some of the most weird ass nudity I've ever seen in a film. It's just so weird. Like that's how you start your film, because at the first you just feel like, is this some sort of weird softcore porno? And that just was like, well, this is weird. Maybe something interesting is gonna happen. No, and it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. It's 1 hour and 30 minutes about approximately. Feels like it goes on for an eternity. Yeah, it starts very odd and interesting, and then it just dies and never seems to end. That's the best summary of that film that I can say. So yeah, Wish Me Luck at number 8. And at number 7 we have, once again, it's one of the Swedish horror films. And you do know that Sweden are not really known for making any good like horror films to begin with. There's probably, I can only like probably count to 2 or 3 good horror films that Sweden has made throughout the years. And that I would say is Evil Ed. Evil Ed, now I can't think about any other. Blood Tracks I thought was kind of funny. And also the vampire film, what is it called? Let the Right One In, that's the one. Those 3 are the first 3 that comes to mind. Other than that, I can't really remember too much. So, but anyway, Root of Darkness from 2016. Boredom. It's just boredom and it's only like 1 hour and 5 minutes long. Feels longer. So yeah. The next one, we have a film which is barely a film. They started to make this film, and then the company just went bankrupt and they couldn't finish the film. Instead of finishing the film with like new footage, they took footage from the previous 3 films, just scattered all over the film basically. So there's probably 10 or 15 minutes worth of new footage, and the rest footage is just flashbacks to part 1, 2, and 3. The film I'm talking about is Sleepaway Camp 4, The Survivor, which I would barely say is even a film, because it's just a flashback film. The reason why this isn't like higher up in this shit list basically is because I'm a big fan of the original 3 films. And at least, even though it's barely a film, at least you have some flashback footage to decent films. So yeah. Then we have at number 5 we have Monster A Go-Go, which has sort of a similar type of story to it, because it started off with the director Bill Rebane, who started to make a film, and somewhere in the mid section of the film, the money just went out the window. I had no money left to like make the film, and it just got shelved for years. And then for some weird reason, Herschel Gordon Lewis said, I want to finish that film. And I'm like, why? Because this is one of the most boring films I've ever seen. I watched this in the middle of the day and I almost fell asleep. That's how boring this film was. Story? What story? There was no story to begin with. It's just a bunch of weird alien that just goes around, roaming around, really slow, really boring. And then all of a sudden he's in the sewers. Why is he in the sewers? We don't ever get any answer to that. Wait a minute. Yeah, sorry, I got interrupted. Well, it's just a really boring film, the Monster Go-Go film. That's what I want to say. So yeah, that's at number 5. Then we have, this is another one of those. I mean, this actually goes for the next 2 titles that I'm going to talk about. But at number 4, we have Cruel Jaws from 1995, which is a film by Bruno Mattei. And if you know Bruno Mattei, he's really the king of rip-off films. I'm saying king because he's made some really entertaining, so bad it's good films before. But this is just bad. I would say, I just said in the a comment below the film that I had stolen footage, you get it. You got it. Stolen score, you got it. Made by Bruno Mattei, you got it. Because this is basically stolen footage from the previous, I think it's the first 3 Jaws films. and also the soundtrack is also stolen, and then it's just mixed with another score just to hide the fact that they stole the score as well. So yeah, a terrible, terrible film. I think this is also known as Jaws 5, which is really strange because yeah, it's just a pretty much a stolen thing, really. So yeah. And then at number 3 we have yeah, it just goes on the same type of category for the bad films, because this next one is called Revenge of the Boogie Man from 1983, which is another one which is just, yeah, pretty much rehashed footage from the first one and barely anything new to the table. A real bore fest. That's just what I wanted to, how I described the film. So yeah, Revenge of the Boogeyman at number 3. Then at number 2 we have a film which I thought was going to be so bad it was funny. Oh, I was so wrong about this. The film is called The Last Vampire on Earth from 2010. Oh, not a single interesting thing about this film. Not even a bad, so bad it's funny. I mean, it's just, as I also said, it's a torture test to see how long you can watch it. And if you don't watch it with friends, how are you ever gonna work your way through this film? So yeah. Then, when I thought that was supposed to be the worst thing that I watched, the next one is sort of a funny little story about the number one film, the worst film that I watched. At number 1 we have a film called Monkey Up from 2016, about a really annoying monkey that just won't shut up. It's a talking monkey, and his voice is irritating and frustrating. None of his jokes are funny. None of the side characters are funny. Not interesting. Nothing. This is terrible. I wrote, oh God, was gonna watch this with friends, and after watching the first 3 or 4 minutes, they said no way. I decided to watch the rest by myself later that evening. Oh God, why did I do that? And that's sort of like a rule that I have for myself, that whenever I've started to watch a film, I always want to watch the entire thing just to say that I've seen the film. But now when I think of it, I just feel ashamed that I've seen this film. That's how bad this film was. So yeah, Monkey Up, number 1, worst film that I've watched during last year. So yeah. Well, anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, keep your eyes open for the next one. I'm not really sure what that video is going to be, if it's going to be an update video or a review video. I haven't made a review video in quite a while, so might be time for one. So yeah, yeah, keep your eyes open for the next video, and see you next time. Bye bye.